Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. It is April the 6th. I'm Rebecca Biblioteca. I am joined today by my wonderful colleagues, Bill Reel. Did you survive conference weekend?
Well, probably better than RFM because I didn't watch it or listen to it.
You're asking Bill. Thanks a lot, Rebecca.
I'm asking Bill first as a lead up to when I'm now going to ask you, RFM, did you survive conference weekend? That's the big
Barely,
question.
and it's not easy. And I'm not kidding either, but I'm not going to wallow in self-pity.
No, you take one for the team in ways that we cannot even imagine. Anyway, we are very excited. We're going to delve into all that. If we can go to our slides here, I wanted to, let's see, are we here? Yes, here we are. Okay. Before I read the list of what we're going to talk about, I also wanted to point out, I did say it was April 6th. This is a very important day in Mormonism, much like a fake Easter date, of March 29th. We have a different birthday for Jesus than the rest of the world on December 25th. We say that Jesus was born on April 6th, although they don't mention that very much anymore. Have you guys noticed that? They just don't really talk about it. Yeah.
You have BC 1. I think Judas would have said BC 4. I think the way he put it was, if you'd come today, you would have reached the whole nation, Israel, in 4 BC. Had no mass communication.
I think that's true. And actually, I borrowed this from another podcaster, and I can't remember where I got it. Latter-day Saints, I think. Anyway, happy birthday, Jesus. Whether it's today or December 25th, we'll have to see. All right, let's dive into what we're going to talk about today. We have a whole bunch of news, so hold on to your hats. Record-breaking Mormon convert baptisms. Bill's going to cover this.
David Bednar? Wasn't David Bednar going to wish Jesus a happy birthday?
I'm sorry. I skipped over. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I can play this, but let me say first, you asked a question, which was, what happened to this? I don't know if you know the story or not, but when this talk was given, I did an episode of Mormon Discussion early on about April 6th and Jesus's birthday. Immediately following this talk, went through all the research, laid out that Stephen Harper and all the people at the Church History Department believe that Section 20 of the D&C, where it says 1830 years after the coming of our Lord, was actually just an intro written by, I believe, John Whitmer to the Doctrine and Covenants. Elder Holland wrote me and informed me that the brethren had taken David Bednar to the woodshed, had informed him that he was not correct in teaching that Jesus was born on April 6th, that such was a mistake. And then Holland decided to chide me for giving David Bednar, an apostle, a hard time when I should have just given a ton of grace, as if false doctrine in a church that claims to be the one and only true church isn't a big deal. Anyway, I think that is at least the beginning of the end of the Jesus is born on April 6th doctrine. And I don't expect that we'll see much more of that anywhere officially going forward.
You just look at this guy and he was sorted into Slytherin.
Well, here's him wishing everybody some notice on Jesus's birthday.
In parcel tongue.
Today is April the 6th. We know by revelation that today is the actual and accurate date of the Savior's birth. April the 6th is also the day on which the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was organized.
He was actually getting choked up about that false doctrine, wasn't he?
And what year was that? Clip taken from? Can
you guess, Bill, when that was? I was surprised how long ago it was.
I'm going to guess 2012, 2013.
I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I think that's exactly right. That your burdens may be easy or something. It's the same one where he gave that crazy analogy about the car and getting off the road and all that kind of stuff.
So many car analogies.
I only knew that because I started the podcast in 2012, and it was something I had done pretty early on in my time. So,
wow. So did this lead to your church discipline, do you feel, Bill? I mean, kind of calling them out, you don't think so?
No, this only led to me and Elder Holland knowing that I knew doctrine better than David Bednar. That's the only thing it led to.
I think that may have eventually led to your church discipline. And I will say that Charlie Harrell has done some amazing research on this. Mormonish did a podcast on April 6th. And then I believe that you guys had him on too on Mormonism Live. So, I mean, this has been debunked every which way. Yet, I'm telling you today on faithful social media, over and over, I have seen happy birthday, Jesus. It's really Jesus' birthday. So it's impossible to root it out at the grassroots level.
It cannot be.
It cannot be.
It does seem
Everybody
strange.
has special knowledge.
If Elder Holland, yes, and that's what it's all about, is the special knowledge that we have that nobody else has. It doesn't matter how irrelevant it is, or how it doesn't make any difference what day Jesus was born on, but we know, therefore we're better, therefore we feel the Spirit and start crying when we talk about it. Did Elder Holland really say, thank you for your communication? We took David Bednar out behind the woodshed and corrected him, but by the way, you shouldn't have brought it up in the first place.
Those are, yes, that's what he said, but those aren't the exact words he used. I'm paraphrasing him, but yes, he expressed that Bednar had been informed he was incorrect, and that he was a little bothered by the fact that I was drawing attention to it and criticizing Elder Bednar for it.
Well, who was it that said it's wrong to criticize church leaders, even if the criticism is valid? And that's it.
It's wrong to criticize leaders of the church, even if the criticism is true.
Ironically, that is really the exact reason you got excommunicated.
It
For
is
saying something that was true, but that you weren't supposed to mention.
Yeah.
I'm just impressed you have that on a button. Like, do you have like a synthesizer there where you can hit each button of each?
It's a Moog synthesizer.
I was going to say.
I just thought that was a voice.
Oh,
No.
I'm just impressed that you could pull that out of a hat, so to speak. All right. If you guys want to know more about April 6th, watch either on Mormonish or find it on Mormonism Live, Charlie Harrell's good stuff, or, you know, other things on Mormonism Live. So, okay, let's talk about what we're going to discuss today. Record-breaking Mormon convert baptisms. This is Bailey's going to cover this. This is super important because I'm guessing at this point, everybody who's faithful friends and family watched conference and heard these stats are now, you know, nah. We're going to find out something different today. General conference highlights from RFM. Oh,
it's actually going to be the only one story from General Conference. It's somewhat involved. It has a backstory, and it is the most galling thing that happened in General Conference, as far as I'm concerned.
Wow, that is a claim, because then I'm going to cover the LDS Streaker, which is what is dominating the news cycle about conference. Ironically, we'll talk about that. New LDS 70 failed to report. I think, who's covering that?
This was the title I created for the story that you have, RFM. Would you rather it say something else? Because this person is a 70 now, and in the past they failed to report or encouraged to report.
Oh, okay. We'll find out what this is. All right. LDS.
Okay, well, we'll get to it. Yeah, that's the story. Are you saying Red Hinsey didn't show up?
No, wasn't he involved in a failure to report child abuse?
Failed to report to police the child sexual abuse that came to his attention back in 2020. Yes.
When we fail to report, I know in Mormonism there's the return and report kind of idea, but generally failure to report in Mormonism is almost always child sex abuse.
Well, your double entendre fooled me, Bill.
That's right. No, it's very clever. I love it. Okay. LDS meeting change aftermath. I'm going to talk about that a little bit because we broke that at the very end of the newscast last Monday. And now we've had a chance to go through it and kind of synthesize some of the comments and some of the things and a little bit of a conspiracy theory. It would not be my story if there wasn't a little bit of conspiracy. And then let's see, Cody temple lighting causes problems for neighbors. And if we have enough time, we'll trademark concerns, bring back the word Mormon. So let's take it straight away with Bill's story about convert baptisms and all those other stats they're so proud to trot out in front of all of us.
Yeah, this is interesting. So I gathered 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025 up on the screen. There's a lot of data there. I'll simply show that stakes are going up a little bit. Missions between 22 and 23 didn't really grow much at all, but then there's a jump to 450 missions in 2024, and they announced 451 missions in 2025. One more mission. Districts. Now, a district is essentially a stake, but in an area where the church is really small. So you have a district president instead of a stake president who oversees mostly branches with branch presidents instead of wards with bishops. Districts are going down. Now, districts are generally a telltale sign of smaller areas where the church isn't growing as well, and the congregations are much further apart. There's not as many people there, probably weaker congregations in terms of activity or total number of members for sure, and those are going down. Wards and branches going up a little bit. Total membership going up a little bit. Children of record. This was, these are kids, babies, prior to the age of 9 who are not baptized, are brought in for baby blessings, for instance. These are the children in the church who have not been baptized under the age of 9. This number is pretty much stagnant. In fact, it went down after 2023 and then just went up a little bit from 24 to 25. Now, the number the church is boasting about this time around is convert baptisms. They're saying they're breaking records. 212,000 in 2022, 251,000 in 23, 308,000. That's like 25% growth, somewhere in that range. And then 2025, 385,490, just under 400,000 baptisms. And they're bragging about this. This is the most they've ever had in a year. You have to go back to like the 90s when RFM and I saw the church as being in its golden age.
Or the 70s when they were baptizing numbers like this in South America.
Yeah, just get them to play a pickup baseball game. Yeah.
Or the 60s when they were baptizing numbers like this in England.
And then full-time missionaries, that's gone up, each year too. Strangely, it was right when I said pay close attention to the missionary growth or decline, and that'll tell you how the church is doing. So that's going up. So let's take a deeper dive at these numbers. This was a graph that was in the Salt Lake Tribune. Again, total members, that trajectory is pretty even. Convert baptisms, it had kind of a decline from 2010 to 2020. And then suddenly there is this giant jump year after year after year. And it's such a strange thing. No ups and downs, not small little increases or decreases, but almost the exact same kind of growth year in and year out. And then you get children of record, which has been in decline and suddenly has plateaued the last 4 or 5 years with a tiny little increase. And I just think that's such a strange juxtaposition. The total members looks like what I would expect. Convert baptism suddenly is doing really well, and children of record is not. It is sort of in the negative space or plateaued. All right. The Salt Lake Tribune, sorry about the two thes. The Salt Lake Tribune dove into the LDS Church reporting of 2025 membership numbers. Again, they don't announce these at conference anymore. They now publish them around the same time that conference is going on so that they're seen in print. Yes, RFM.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just, I thought you were reading from the next slide.
Yeah, some people in the chat are wondering if what you're saying is matching what we're seeing on the screen.
Yeah, sorry about that. There's the next slide. So the church's, let me start over here. The Salt Lake Tribune dove into the LDS Church reporting of 2025 membership numbers, saying the church is reporting strong, even record level growth in convert baptisms that blew the previous record out of the water. Yeah, and I'll go back. I'll just show them. There's the trajectory. Total members going up slowly, sort of what you would expect. Convert baptisms were going down, and then suddenly there's this year after year dynamic growth. And then children of record, a decline, and then a plateau. So I would name that sort of expected, better than expected, worse than expected. And so there's that. At the same time, the Trib quietly asked questions about an underlying negative data point. They're pointing out that the number of congregations and organizational units isn't growing nearly as fast as the membership numbers would suggest. This is their article there on the right-hand side. LDS Church sees a record rise in converts, but why are fewer babies being added to the rolls? And perhaps more noticeable is the decline in children of record, which raises concerns around how that growth is actually showing up on the ground. The Trib seems to be noticing that we are here at the Trib seems to be noticing what we here at the Mormon Newscast have stated for some time. Something here doesn't quite line up the way you'd expect if everything were truly expanding in record numbers. So with that, somebody put this on Twitter. This is the account Mormons Speak, and he's noticing the same thing I've noticed, the same thing the Salt Lake Tribune seems to be noticing too. The LDS Church claims to have an additional 507,000 members from 2022 and 2024, but only has 346 additional ward congregations, meaning that these new wards or branches would have 1,600 members each. Clearly, the church is not retaining members. And I'll just note, when you go to Utah's, and maybe Idaho or a little bit of Arizona, but Utah is going to be different than the mission field. And where I was in Ohio, our ward had about 400 members on the rolls and about 115 to 125 people who would show up on Sundays. And I think that's pretty normal for an average ward out in the mission field. Strangely, the growth the church is claiming in baptisms ends up being essentially no growth in wards or branches. And we saw that in the previous slides with districts, again, which are smaller areas. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next slide here. So I asked this question to ChatGPT. I put in this. I said, the LDS Church claims a membership in 2025 of 17,887,212 members. And it claims the number of children of record as 91,835. Again, that's how many children of record were accounted for in new children of record, by the way. New children of record accounted for in 2025. And I believe a child becomes a child of record when they receive a baby blessing, which would be mostly made up of active families having children and also a small number of inactive families who still felt enough connection to the church to still bring their child in for a blessing. And we know about half the church membership. By the way, ChatGPT corrected me, so I don't know if I'm right or it's right, but it suggested that blessed or not, children under the age of 9 who the church knows exist, who have not been baptized yet, is what it positioned as children of record. I said, we know about half the church membership is in the USA and about half is outside the USA, with a large number of USA members living in Utah. You should be able to make an estimate of how many children a population of that many people, 17,887,000, would birth in a year, and that would likely lead to you being able to make a fairly accurate guess at what percentage of those 17, almost 18 million are active or care enough about remaining connected to Mormonism to bring a child in to be blessed. Now, the next couple slides, I think it does a great job of diving into some of this data. And so I want to share some of the things that it said. Using the LDS Church's stated numbers for the 2025 membership of 17,887,000 and some change, and the church reported 91,835 new children of record. That means the church added only about 5.13 children of record per 1,000 claimed members. For comparison, the CDC's U.S. crude birth rate is about 11 births per 1,000. And that's in the official 2022 national data, while the World Bank's latest crude birth rate figures available is 16.33 per 1,000 outside the United States. That's sort of the world birth rate. If you applied the U.S. rate to 17.9 million people, you would expect about 200,000 births per year. New children of record should be around 200,000 if this was just a USA only church. And if you applied the world birth rate, you'd expect about 300,000 births. Again, what the church is saying is 91,835. They're saying here a blend of USA and world birth rate would give you approximately about 245,000 new children of record. What do we get? We get 91,835. So what it determined was This equals about a 37% participation rate. And we all know that the activity rate of the church is somewhere at the most at 35%. And this makes sense based on this, because again, some inactive families would bring their children in for baby blessings. All right, I'm going to move to the next one. This puts the church's 91,835 new children of record at about 47% of the U.S. birth rate and about 31% of the world birth rate, 38% if you sort of take the median of those. Keep in mind, this is my note, by the way, keep in mind as a subgroup within a larger population, Mormons have a higher birth rate, which actually makes the actual activity percentage lower. So in plain English, if the whole claimed membership were meaningfully active in reproducing at ordinary population rates, you would expect the children of record number to be a lot higher. So as a rough estimate, this points to something like 1/3 of claimed membership being active or at least connected enough to still bring a child into the system. And honestly, that may be a little generous because the people most likely to be active are also the people most likely to be in family forming years and to have children at above average rates. Again, the Mormon birth rate would be higher. That would push the implied active share down, not up. In other words, the data I'm saying, the actual percentage is almost certainly worse. And then I note here, the child of record figure is broadly consistent with maybe a 30 to 35% activity rate of claim membership, or those still meaningfully attached, with a center of gravity probably closer to the low to mid 30s than to 35. That is not a precise measurement of activity. It's a demographic inference. So I'm just going to note that. I'm going to move on here. Sorry, lots of data, probably pretty boring, but these were my takeaways. As I plugged into the data into AI and asked it to make some conclusions, I thought some of these were interesting. Number one, convert baptisms are exploding, but the system isn't expanding the same way. Converts jumped from 212,000 in 2022 to 385,000 in 2025. That is massive. That's an increase of 80%. If that many people are joining, where are they going? Because wards and branches are only growing at a rate of 2.2%. 80% growth in convert baptisms, 2.2% growth in wards and branches. District, okay, so it says stakes grow modestly, districts actually decline overall. That's again what it's noticing in the data. If converts were sticking, you'd expect more wards, more branches, more districts, especially in places where there isn't a well-established Mormon ward or stake yet. You would think you'd start to see some branches and districts showing up, and what we actually see there is shrinkage or it being sort of plateaued. Okay, next one here. Number 2, districts, 517 of them down to 488. Districts are typically newer areas, weaker areas, places without enough strength to become stakes. If convert growth were real and durable, districts should be growing or converting into stakes at a noticeable rate. Instead, they're shrinking. That suggests that there's fragile growth or churn, not stable expansion. All right, next one, third observation. Children of record is flat. 2022, 89,000. 23, 93,000. 24, it goes down, 91,000. 25, it barely goes up. Just over 200. Just over 200 additional children of record. Now compare that to the increasing membership by 885,000. Wow. Convert baptisms are skyrocketing. If the church were truly growing in a healthy, active way, you'd expect more active families, you'd expect more births, you'd expect more children of record. But you don't see that. You see stagnation. Number 4, missionaries are up, which explains the converts if we trust these numbers. 62,000 missionaries in 2022 has gone up to 78,000 in 2025. Now you've got 16,000 more missionaries knocking on doors, sharing the gospel here, sharing it there. So convert growth makes sense. More missionaries equals more baptisms. But are those baptisms translating into long-term retention? Nope. Are those baptisms translating into active participation? Nope. Are they turning into generational continuity? Nope. Not going to be. This isn't going to produce a next generation of Latter-day Saints. These are simply people who have joined the church. If you trust the numbers, these are people who have joined the church, but they no longer participate. They've left pretty quickly. And all of us have had that experience. When I was in the Sandusky ward and I had joined the church, there was me and Shirley Dress. We were the only two people who had joined the Sandusky ward. And there were about 20 people who had joined over like an 18-month span. I used to have the piece of paper that had all the folks that the missionaries were keeping track of, all the people who had been baptized in the last 18 months. Me and Shirley were the only ones who were active in the church. And I think that's pretty normal when you go places, that converts don't tend to stick around. Your real activity comes from the generation after generation families in the church. So the data says that these baptisms are not translating into actual strength of the church. I'll stop here. Any thoughts from you here before I go into the fifth and wrap up?
I would just like to thank you for explaining the birth rate and the children of record, because that to me is a huge smoking gun. Those statistics do not lie. That is incredibly important to understand. And you're spot on right there. I think we should do a short just on that. It's absolutely true. And of course, they're going to say, okay, fewer marriages. We know that maybe fewer children. This is why Oaks is hammering, get married on your mission. Okay, date on your mission and get married soon afterwards. But that doesn't explain it. That's retention, as you said. That's healthy families that are blessing their children. And it really is a stat, I think, that they've overlooked, how we can crunch those numbers. As someone said in the chat, the math ain't mathin', right? It just isn't. And there's no way around that. So my other comment on convert baptisms, which they love to just show this boost, Africa is the South America of the 90s. And there is growth there, but I don't think that there's going to be retention. And I feel like the other thing they're not saying is there's growth for all of Christianity in Africa. The Catholic Church off the charts, evangelicals off the charts. Mormonism's growth is very, very small compared to these other Christian churches. So we'll see. The numbers look great. I mean, when did we ever see mass baptisms by a river, right? Hundreds of people in white, most of them youth. If you look at the pictures, that is not a sustainable model. So we'll watch it. But thank you, Bill, for hammering on that children of record. That's really important.
Anything from you, RFM?
I'll have a couple of comments at the end. I just observed that it seems to be taking forever for the church to get out of the 17 millions.
It is.
For a church that's growing like it's never grown before, it seems to be stuck in the 17 millions.
You would think with 400,000 baptisms this year, you'd be able to get through that number pretty quick, but it isn't as fast. Baptisms might be high. Missionaries might be high. But translating that into increased faithfulness and activity in the church generally, not happening. So my fifth observation, and I got 2 slides after that. Membership growth versus lived reality. Membership grows by 885,000 over 3 years, but units barely grow. Districts decline. Children of record stays flat. One is the total membership of the church. The other one is an indicator of who shows up on Sunday, sits in the pew, and listens to the message. That's a pretty clear disconnect. The records are growing faster than the lived church. That's my note here. Now, the Salt Lake or the Deseret News, of course, they're going to brag about this. Deseret News puts out Latter-day Saint membership past 17.88 million in 2025 as churches' growth accelerates. Now, the thing these guys and the church leadership, they're always focusing on the total membership. That includes not only inactives, which is, again, 65% of the church at worst in terms of best. That's the best it could be, the way they would wish it to be laid out. The best the activity rate could possibly be in this church is 35%. And my point here is that you also have a large number of people that when they go into other countries and they do surveys and they allow people to self-label what their religious affiliation is. We have certain countries where the church says we have this many people in our country, and then we have that country having independent research where people say self-label, and the discrepancy is exponentially different. It's such a big divide. It is such a wide divide. It'll be, for example, the church will say it has 200,000 Latter-day Saints in this area, and only 36,000 people will report as being Latter-day Saints. So the church is counting people who were Mormon at some point in their life, but who have gotten so far away from the church, it's so far in the rearview mirror that when they're asked what they are, they don't even think to say that they're Mormon. They're something else altogether. The church still counts them. So if we're going to say the church, anybody who's ever been Mormon, is the church growing in that field? Sure. If we're going to count people who show up on Sundays and participate in the church is not experiencing big growth. It is essentially stagnant. Now, I'm going to go to this next one. This is my last slide, and I'll try to make sense of these three things. Raw growth comparison. Full-time missionaries since 2022 has increased missionaries out each year, 2025 in comparison to 2022, a 25.7% growth. Total membership during that same time has only grown 5.2%. That's a big discrepancy between those two data points. Missionary growth, 26%. Membership growth, 5%. Now, here's the two things. Missionaries, the growth of missionaries year over year from 2025 in comparison to back to 2022, missionaries have grown, that growth rate has been 5 times faster than total membership. But get this, missionary growth has been 8 times faster than children of record. That's a big difference. The number of young people deciding to go on a mission has grown 8 times faster than children coming into the church, generally through families that are currently already in the church. That number, those differences are a little bigger than I could just take in and swallow without wanting to raise questions and doubts about the numbers that the church shares. What about this catches your eye, RFM?
Well, 3 points. First off, the reason that they count almost 18 million on their rolls is because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints literally is counting as members people who died half a century ago. And the reason I say that is because if they have members that they lose track of, which I'm going to guess is the majority of them, then they continue to count them as members until they would have arrived at their 110th birthday. I'm going to guess that out of some of those people they lose track of, some of them pass away before they reach the age of 60. I think that's a reasonable conclusion, which means that the church is counting as members people who died over half a century ago. That's the first thing. Any comments about that, by the way, before I go on?
Just that I think you're right. The church has acknowledged in the past through manuals and various places to clerks in the church that that's what happens. And so, as you point out, the majority of people are inactive, and almost certainly the majority of them are unaccounted for. And they're kept on the more than half the population of the church is unknown their whereabouts, and they are counted till they're 110.
And the reason why is because the church wants to continue to grow. That is one of the signs that it is true. Now, the other thing is that I mentioned that on Palm Sunday, I went to church, saw the missionaries, asked if I could see what the ward was, because the ward has a new name now, a much more impersonal name now than when I attended over 10 years before. But I've been here long enough that I know in this town, there used to be 2 wards, a north and a south. Or no, it was a first and a second, right? First and second ward in this town. Now, there's only 1 ward, and it doesn't cover the town. It covers the town and all the way out to the water to the east. And I know that because I asked him and he showed it to me. In this stake, there are now 5 wards, and that's it. And there used to be 9 to 10. That's what's really happening. Now, I know that in California, when the stakes start shrinking and the members leave, and finally the Mormons can't deny it anymore, their response is, well, they're all picking up stakes and moving to Utah. And I also know that when the same damn thing happens in Utah, all the Mormons say, well, they're picking up stakes and moving to California. Well, all the Mormons are picking up stakes and moving somewhere, but they're moving off the membership rolls, or at least out of activity, out of the pews, if not out of the membership rolls. And I want to say something else, because this occurred to me. I think it might be true. There would be no way to prove it. But as you were talking, Bill, it occurred to me that I think what's going on, obviously these numbers don't work. Rebecca had said earlier that those statistics don't lie. I think that all that statistics do is lie. That's like their one job is to lie, statistics. And I don't believe that any of these statistics actually have much meaning in reality. But I do think, I have this feeling, and let me say why, because at the end of yesterday's general conference, when President Oaks was giving his final comments, there was something that was notable by its absence. Can you guess what that is, Rebecca?
There were so many things that they leave unsaid. I can't imagine exactly which one you're trying to hone in on.
Well, you should get it. No temples.
Oh, well, yes, of course. And I feel that's why conference was kind of a lead balloon this year. I think a lot of people went and did Easter instead. There were no temple announcements. Yep.
No temple announcements.
Yep.
I have a feeling that even though I wouldn't trust President Oaks as far as I could throw him, I think that he has been left with a situation, not only with going crazy with the temples, but going crazy with the numbers. And I think that he is trying now, he's got to balance this in his mind. He's got to, number one, try and make the numbers that the church has been fabricating about its membership and all these other numbers, try and get those to more closely approximate reality. It's not going to happen all at once. The idea is to do this over time so it's not so noticeable, and to try and do it in such a way as the church doesn't appear to be shrinking in an obvious manner to the casual observer of these statistics. I think that's what he's trying to do. And I think that that's what accounts for the fact that when you look at them as closely as you did, Bill, and thank you for that, they just don't match.
Yep.
Rebecca, any other thoughts from you?
Yeah, I say look at the newscast. Of the 3 of us, 2 of us are members on record and counted as active LDS, right? They're counted in those stats that they share. So, go out in the world and times that by however many, and you'll see where these stats are coming from. So basically the stats include people, like you said, who are dead, passed away. It's a small percentage of people that live to be 110. I mean, you can err on the side of they're probably going to die in their 80s, but they don't.
Just had a story, was it last week, about some lady who finally reached 110? She was the oldest woman in the world or something?
No, it's an anomaly. And that's why I always say the age of the apostles themselves are an anomaly, statistical improbability. It's very interesting. And then people who didn't remove their records like us. But I do have an answer to this missionary scenario where there are so many missionaries, right? And my friend Ron Jorgensen, he does a great job of keeping track of the stats. He just happened to text me and say, did you know that 90 wards have closed this year so far? 90. 90 wards. That doesn't really sound like growth, right? But as he explained in one of my podcasts we did, there is a bubble of LDS youth that were born in 2008. Okay. This is a baby boomer like bubble where there's a lot of them all of a sudden, and it's been moving through the system. I don't know what happened in 2008. All I can think of is it was cheap entertainment, mortgage crisis. No one could go out. They stayed in, right? So, but this bubble is moving through, and they are 18 now, 18, 19, missionary age. You're going to see a lot more missionaries, but that doesn't mean that there, are more people that are deciding to go, more converts. It's just a numbers game, as it always is. And I agree with you, RFM, that President Oaks is going to have to find more and more creative ways to spin this, because there's a dead letter office, right, where the records go, where they send the records out to the wards. The wards try to find the people. I've talked before about my relatives that went on a mission where their sole job was to try to find people. They found no one. And that means track them down. Where did they move to? Where can we send their records to? Those records are eventually sent back to Salt Lake, but then they send them out, scatter them among the wards again. They don't want them all in one place, a dead letter office, because that's the true number of people that are not active members. Those lost souls, we're talking millions of records. And if we could find that number, we would know.
Yeah, I'll finish off with one last thing, and then I'll turn the time back over to you. And I'm going to try to explain this. So total membership has this tiny gradual increase that's pretty consistent year after year. And the number of children of record has plateaued over the last 4 or 5 years. And prior to that, it was in, I would consider, moderately steep decline. In let's say an average ward, how important is it for families in the church to bring their new children in and have them blessed? That's a big deal. That's a big moment in a Mormon family's life, is taking your kids in for their baby blessing. What we need to, you'd have to explain how, compared to 2022, how 8 times more likely a young man or young woman is to decide to serve a mission in 2026 when they wouldn't have in 2022. They're 8 times more likely in 2026 to serve a mission in comparison to the children of record growth that's happening. What that means to me is you would have to believe that there are so many young men and young women out there who in 2022 were like, I'm not going on a mission. And in 2026, they were 8 times more of them were convinced, compared to children of record, to go and serve a mission. I'm probably not saying that right. You would expect people deciding to serve a mission to grow in a similar rate to the children of record growth in the church. Those are both 2 indicators of faithfulness and activity in the church. If children of record is growing, then you know that young families are active in the church, and that's growing. If young men and young women are serving missions, that too would be an indicator of an active family. But strangely, it's 8 times more families having a kid go on a mission, growth rate wise, not numbers, growth rate wise, compared to 2022, than children of record entering the church in comparison to 2022. That to me seems statistically out of place and isn't believable. And I'll leave it at that. I don't buy the numbers. Those 2 should moderately coincide with each other, and they don't.
Well, Bill, it's not like the church has ever lied to you about anything before.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Why would you believe them? And by the way, what does it say about a church that says, don't worry about who's in the pews on Sunday? We're not telling you that. We want to focus on anyone and everyone who at any point in their life was ever Mormon before. That's the number we want to count and look at for growth. We don't want to tell you about who's showing up on Sundays and who's actually dedicated and faithful to this religion. Maybe that alone should tell you not to trust them. Back to you.
Yep, that was excellent. I hope everybody goes back and takes screenshots of all your data, Bill, because it is very, very telling since they won't tell us, right? All right, let's move on. Here we go. RFM, freshly recovered from his conference marathon, is
Not
going to
recovered yet by any stretch, Rebecca.
I know. I know. You are just, wow. We all, whoo, yeah, you do it so we don't have to. That's for sure.
Man, I'll tell you, this is really, really tough. I'm just starting to get my mojo back late this afternoon. I thought, geez, am I even going to be able to make it through this newscast tonight? But I have lived to tell the tale. I am feeling a little bit better. It's kind of a downer having to listen to apostles and prophets blather on for an entire weekend about nothing. Here, the general conference recap. This was the Saturday morning. I did that. The Saturday afternoon, the Sunday morning, and the Sunday afternoon. And those are all. Those I came in around 45 minutes on each one. Now, here is a slide about the women's vote in the Solemn Assembly, which has been moving around a bit. Oh, did you take yours out?
I took mine out because it fits
I told you
in
to
your
take mine out.
Well, I don't know. I put this data together, but you can talk about it as long as it gets
It's fine.
out there.
I want you to talk about it. I got it from you. I used it in my first episode, but because I got it from you, and I said I got it from you in the episode.
There you go. Yeah,
they did pretty much what they did last time. Is that about it?
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, I just wanted to point out to people that, the Solemn Assembly is when you're recognized by your group and you get to stand up and you get to, oppose or affirm. And I wanted to see, because I remember a time where women were not called out as a group. And I remember being really disappointed. I saw everybody else stand up and I was like, well, wait, where's mine? So I wanted to kind of refresh my memory on the history of that. And prior to 1995, it's true. Apostles, 70s, Melchizedek, Aaronic, and then congregation. And that was when the women stood up with the children and the toddlers and the girls, and everybody stood up again and were able to vote. So President Hinckley is the one that said, okay, maybe that's a bad look. It is 1995. Let's make the women 18 and older their own group, and let's make the young women their own group. That was fantastic. However, the order in which they voted was the women voted after the little boys, right? The Aaronic priesthood.
That's why.
I know, that's why we'll know. They tell us now we do hold the priesthood. So you got to get your facts straight. But again, not a great look all the way through the 2000s. It was not until 2018 that women, adult, mature women serving in all kinds of callings in the ward, were able to cast their vote, affirmative, of course, always affirmative, after the Melchizedek priesthood holders, then the Aaronic priesthood, and then the young women, and then the congregation. So I just found that really interesting, kind of that little history, that it's pretty much recent history that women were included on sort of the same level as being able to vote.
All right. Thank you so much for that. By the way, I do not think, now I could be wrong, I don't think I've heard any authority saying that women hold the priesthood. I think what I hear them saying is that when you do whatever it is you women do, like making those great donuts while the men are away at their meetings, that you're doing it by the power of the priesthood.
Yeah. Wiggle words. But I'm telling you, a lot of faithful LDS, because I'm always on their social media, believe that they hold the priesthood. They defend that. But you're right.
And wiggly words. That's right where the church wants them.
Yep.
Believing they have something they don't have.
Exactly.
And cannot exercise. Just trying to keep my facts straight, Rebecca. Oh, and then something unusual happened. It was a first. Can you tell us what that was, Rebecca, with the new primary general presidency called?
We have a new primary
the Saturday afternoon session. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. No, we have a new general primary president. It's always interesting to watch the women, as they're called, because we know they're only going to be in for maybe is it 3 to 5 years? It's short. It's certainly not a lifetime sentence. Or opportunity, like the men, of course. And this is Rosemary Chibata. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. And she is the president, and those are her counselors. So, and that was something that made everyone go, this is kind of exciting. This is kind of exciting because she is originally she is the first African to serve as president of the church's general organizations. So there it is. Right. So we did not get an apostle that was any different from any other apostle that we've ever gotten, but we did get a primary president. So everyone is very excited about this. And she seems lovely. I've read her bio. She seems amazing.
Oh, really? Did you have any thoughts about this, Bill?
I think it's monumental. And I think this is an incredible move forward. to have a person in leadership who is a head over an organization at the general level and have that person be a person of color, I think is a huge step forward. It will be interesting to see when our first person of color apostle is called. And I still think that's a long way away.
And we do have to remember, if I can say, that all of these General Relief Society, General Primary, they do not report directly to an apostle, directly to the prophet. They are part of a committee that is overseen by a general authority. So while they are called president, like everybody seems to be a president, they do not have a direct reporting chain like you would assume a president would to anyone higher up. They are on that priesthood and family committee, and they work through general authorities. So it's not exactly what it sounds like.
Okay. All right. Really good. Thank you for that. Now, here is the most galling thing that happened in General Conference. It's the most galling thing I can remember happening in General Conference, and that's saying something. But here we are back. It's Thursday of last week. It's April 2nd, I think it was. And that it was announced that the new Area 70s were sustained at the April 2026 General Conference leadership meeting, which means they're already sustained, but they're going to put them in front of the congregation again for a sustaining vote. Although they're not going to read all their names, they're going to do what they always do now, and they're going to say, hey, it's printed in the church news or over here on the church website, and you can go over there and look at the names that you're going to vote for right now. Now, here's the deal. One of those 91 names of new Area 70s is Rhett R. Hinsey from Pennsylvania, the stake president who for 2 years knew that one of his bishops, although he may have been not a bishop anymore, but still a bishop, once a bishop, always a bishop in the LDS church, when he discovered that one of his bishops had sexually abused 2 kids 20 years earlier. He called the church to find out what to do. The church told him, don't tell the police. He did not tell the police. And this fellow, this bishop, continued free in the community, though secretly excommunicated, I'm sure. He continued free in the community, free to reoffend for 2 years until he was arrested because not the LDS church reported him to police, but the therapist for one of the adult victims reported it to police, and he got arrested, and now he's been found guilty, and he is in prison. And Red R. Hinsey, this guy right here, okay, just got promoted to be in Area 70 in the LDS church. There's the guy right there, being flanked by his 2 counselors, one of whom may or may not own a toupee store. Pennsylvania is not messing around. Something, Rebecca? What?
I'm sorry, no.
Okay. Well, this guy on the left, that's Sean Gooden. That's the child molester. Okay. The one that this guy on the right, the stake president, who's now in Area 70, covered up for. This is actually a clip from a news thing. I'm going to shorten this. I went through this in a little more detail last Friday night on Mormonism After Dark, and I did that because I wanted to say something about it before the general sustaining vote was going to happen, which ended up happening on Saturday afternoon. Try and use my voice for whatever good it is, however many people will listen to it, to let them know what's going on and what the membership was going to be asked to be accomplices to when they were asked to raise their hand to support this guy. So I'll just go ahead. I was going to go ahead and go past this one. Bill, this is back in early February of 2024 when the stake president, Rhett R. Hinsey, was arrested. I tell you what, can you play it? Because the thing is this, more people are going to watch this than watch Mormonism After Dark. And I want to make sure everybody knows this story because it is that important, I think. Thank you, Bill.
State police charged a local leader of the LDS Church for not reporting an alleged child sexual assault by another church leader. Here's Seth Kaplan.
Today, we're announcing charges against Rhett Hinsey. He is accused of failing to report as mandated as his position in the church.
State police say Hinsey is 50 years old, lives in New Cumberland, and is what's called Harrisburg's stake president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. overseeing church wards, including the one in Lebanon, where Sean Gooden was a leader until he was arrested in Virginia and then in Pennsylvania for allegedly sexually assaulting children between 1997 and 2000, who were between 8 and 12 years old when the alleged assaults happened.
But in the meantime, Mr. Hinsey became aware of what happened.
Became aware, police say, in October 2020, almost 2 years before Gooden was first arrested in Virginia, but didn't report the allegations. Hinsey is charged under this mandated reporter law for failing to report or refer what he knew. State police say Hinsey is a mandated reporter under the law.
The law was strengthened in 2014
after the Penn State Jerry Sandusky child sex assault scandal.
There's a whole host of positions responsible for the care of individuals, namely children, that are mandated by law to report allegations of child abuse that they become aware of. And Mr. Hinsey failed to do that.
Lieutenant Adam Reed says mandated reporters often report possible abuse through Childline, which relays the reports to the right law enforcement agencies. Hinsey is charged with a third-degree felony, punishable by up to 7 years in prison. But if you don't know if you're a mandated reporter or if you know about something you're required to report,
when in doubt, certainly play it safe. I mean, I think it's just a good rule of thumb. If you become aware of any kind of serious crimes, especially when someone is in danger, to simply report it to law enforcement.
And that was our Seth Kaplan reporting. Now, tonight, Hinsey's lawyer provided a statement from the church. It says, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints works to actively prevent abuse. Our hearts ache for victims of abuse, and the church is committed to addressing such incidents wherever they are found. The church trains its leaders and supports their lawful efforts. The charges now brought by local prosecutors for failing to report the abuse are misguided, and the church will vigorously defend him. Hinsey is also chief operating officer at the Harrisburg-based Bravo Group, a government relations and communications firm. The firm tells us he is now on leave.
So I want you to understand that the church says in its statement, the very first line is that it works actively to prevent child abuse. When it's talking about a case where it told the stake president to not report somebody that he knew was a child abuser and let him be free in the community for another 2 years, he'd still be free in the community if that darn therapist hadn't called the cops like she was required to do. So anyway, that's the first part. Any thoughts from you, Rebecca or Bill?
They could just read that statement as many times as they want, and you see it in every article. You see it every time this comes up, but most of it is not accurate, as you pointed out, or true whatsoever. So that is just incredible.
And I'll just say, you know, we played this with what was the senator who mentioned being church broke. We all know that on this side of things, that the people that are being called into the top levels of leadership are those who have established loyalty over goodness, ethics, honesty. I think it's Gordon something, isn't it?
Is it Smith?
Smith?
Yeah, Gordon H. Smith. Just pulled it up.
No.
This is one of those instances. If we three were running the church and we said, like, hey, we could call Hinsey from Pennsylvania, all three of us would be like, don't even dare do that. You don't want that in this and muddying these waters. You don't want that. But this is a church that goes, I need to have the loyal people here. It makes perfect sense when you're guided by trying to make sure that the next generation of leadership is filled with people who will do what they're told at the expense of doing what is right, that Hinsey is the perfect guy to put in. Just like Carnevale, my stake president, was the perfect guy to add to the 70s after I was excommunicated. Anybody who demonstrates that they will choose loyalty to the leaders over doing the right thing has a good chance in this church of being promoted.
Good point. So we had done an episode on this back at Mormonism Live in early, that last news report was January 31st, 2024. This was a couple days later. And we did that on Mormonism Live episode 168, where we were able to have members of the abuser's family, Sean Gooden's family, on the show to talk about what was going on. And they were also able to provide us with an audio tape. And the audio tape was when one of the counselors in the stake presidency, the very next Sunday, showed up in one of the wards and read a statement and gave an announcement about what was going on with the stake president, because it's in the news and everybody's talking about it. So he's going to try and calm that down by reading the statement and saying a few things on behalf of the stake president. If we can go to this bill, this next one, and this is the audio of it. Now, before you play it, I want you to know this. This is incredible, because in this statement, what he does is he admits, this is the counselor for the stake presidency. He admits, as he's reading the statement prepared by the church, that the stake president did nothing wrong. He did exactly what he was told to do by the church in not reporting this to police. In fact, he goes further and says the law forbade the stake president from reporting this to police. And that is absolutely false. It did not forbid him from reporting it to police. It may have an exception that they used to get it dismissed, which they did in June of that year. But no, there was nothing that said that the stake president could not report this to police. So if we've got the audio here, it takes a couple of minutes. There's some kids in the background. If you've been to a Mormon church lately, you'll be used to it. So let's go ahead and let's play the audio then, which is basically, this is the second counselor in the stake presidency reading a prepared statement from the church, probably from church legal.
So I'm going to turn time over to President Johnson. Following him, they will come in opening hymn number 70. Sing praise to him, and our opening invocation will be given by Brother Kalali.
Brothers and sisters, many of you are aware that the state police this past week charged President Hinchy with the failure to report information about an abuse situation that was given to him when he was acting as clergy as a stake president. And there's been a lot of information that's been out on the internet and causing questions. The article Spell mentioned that based on the research and the position the church has, that President Hinchy in this particular situation did not have discretion, or was not permitted to report that particular information. This particular situation occurred over 20 years ago. The victims of the abuse are over 30 years old right now, and they've asked us to read a statement. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints works actively to prevent abuse. Our hearts ache for victims of abuse, and the church is committed to addressing such incidents wherever they are found. The church trains its leaders and supports their lawful efforts. The charges now brought by local prosecutors for failing to report the abuse are misguided, and the church will vigorously defend him. The situation is much more complicated legally than the information you're reading on the internet would lead you to believe. One thing I can tell you is that Elder Cook, member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, has been actively monitoring and watching what is going on. President Haney, who is the president of the area where we live, General Authority 70, has also thoroughly reviewed the situation. He's talked with all the lawyers involved. And the counsel we've been given is that we move forward, we continue to have our meetings, continue to work, and that all of this will be resolved appropriately, and that it's in Heavenly Father's hands, and that we're to have confidence in our church leaders and understand that everything that President Hinchy did was fully approved by the church. He followed appropriate legal protocols, and that he's done everything that he was supposed to have done. Thank you.
Everything he did was approved by the church, and he did everything he was supposed to have done. Okay, I'm going to continue on with this really quick, okay? Because we're moving up, remember, to the most galling moment in General Conference. Mormon stake president charged RFM. I at RFM did a brief analysis, 35 minutes long. That's pretty brief for me. Did a brief analysis of the statute in Pennsylvania and the statutes that applied here, and I identified a potential defense that the church might have, the stake president might have, not because of what he did being right or wrong, but because of the way in which the church is structured compared with the language of the statute. That is there in that episode. I'm not going to go into it now. I don't know. I wasn't part of the negotiations between the parties, but that may have played a part. Now, on June 7th, 2024, the district attorney in the case announced the withdrawal of the criminal complaint against Red Hinsey. And I wanted to make sure that that is known because that's important. That's part of the story, that these charges were dismissed by the district attorney. And there was a deal there with the church that the church was going to do all this great training and make things so much better in the church in exchange for this boon. And that takes us back to the fact that this guy, Red Hinsey, just got promoted in the church, and he was going to be asked to be sustained again by the general membership on General Conference weekend. So, talking about Mormonism After Dark on Friday, I even asked the question last Friday about what would D. Todd Kristofferson talk about given the awkward situation in which he finds himself. His brother, Wade, is charged with child sex abuse, and his offenses go back decades. Wade was even excommunicated from the church a long time ago. But he moved, and I think that was from Ohio to Indiana, was reinstated and received callings again, and apparently there may have been a little asterisk taken off of his name in the church records. Up until then, the church kept all of this very quiet. Then on November 20th of last year, 2025, Wade Kristofferson was arrested on new charges of child sex abuse. In a subsequent statement, President D. Todd Kristofferson claims he didn't know about his brother's predations until 2020. Many people are finding that difficult to believe, both because of the closeness and proximity between these two brothers and the fact that the victims so far appear to be predominantly, and not, if not exclusively, children in the family, but also because of D. Todd Kristofferson's ecclesiastical position and his ability to know what's going on with all the members of the church and possibly to affect them for their benefit if it's a brother who needs a helping hand. So I figured D. Todd Kristofferson is going to talk about anything other than kids. Kids are not even going to be in his talk because he has to be at the other end of the earth from anything like this with the focus that's on him at this point. Having said all of this, by the way, I was right about that. He didn't say anything about kids. He starts with the second coming for no apparent reason except to gin up, controversy and throw some red meat to those crazies over there on the Mormon Last Days podcast, which are going great guns because lots of people are really enthused about this. Jesus, it's been almost 2,000 years since he died, but he's coming back. Can you imagine how long that means he's been on Social Security? I mean, no wonder I have to wait so long to start collecting. Jesus has been eating it all up for 2,000 years almost. But here's what happens, okay? This is actually a news report that I'm not going to read, but it goes into detail. We did before, I believe, about the allegations against Wade Kristofferson, D. Todd's brother, and they're pretty graphic. So here we are. And if we can take this is actually a video clip. There are two video clips. The thing that shocked me, okay, are you ready? The thing that shocked me is we have the whole solemn assembly thing, and that's just for the first presidency and the apostles, and everybody does it in order, but nobody else gets sustained except for them, over and over and over and over again. Now they're well and sustained. But nobody else got sustained in the solemn assembly. So at the beginning of the second session, on Saturday afternoon, solemn assembly, Saturday morning. At the beginning of the second session on Saturday afternoon, now they go ahead and they go through sort of a perfunctory sustaining of everybody else, including, like I knew they were going to, though I thought they were going to skip it for a bit, but no, the 91 new Area 70, including Red Hinsey, excuse me. The thing that shocked me, are you ready? The thing that shocked me is who it was who was presenting Red Hinsey for a sustaining vote. by the membership of the church. And it was D. Todd Kristofferson. Here's the first clip.
Brothers and sisters, in addition to the sustaining of the new First Presidency and members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles in the Solemn Assembly that took place this morning, President Oaks has asked that I now present the other general authorities, Area 70s, and general officers of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for your sustaining vote. We ask that you please express your support in the usual way. If there are any who oppose any of the proposals, we ask that you contact your stake president.
Now, the next clip on the next slide, Bill, because he goes through some other people first, including the new primary presidency. I think they get done first. Then he gets to Red Hinsey, who he's not going to mention his name, which is why I had his picture on the previous slide, okay? Because Red Hinsey is in the 91 that he's going to ask for the sustaining, and he's not going to tell his name, and he sure as hell isn't going to tell what happened with him.
We note that 91 new Area 70s were sustained during the General Conference leadership meetings on Thursday, April 2nd, and then announced on the church's website. We invite you to sustain these brethren in their new assignments. Those in favor, please manifest it. Those opposed may indicate by the same sign.
And there you have it, the most galling moment that I have ever seen in General Conference. I'll have plenty to say about it on Friday night when I can use the language that I think is appropriate. But until then, I'd like to know your thoughts about it. Bill?
Yeah. Again, he doesn't say the name, so he sort of gets to sidestep. It would have been so much worse if he says his name out loud. But having an apostle, now member of the First Presidency, whose brother is a multiple-time offender, then read the sustaining of someone else who helped cover up abuse, who should not, in any world where you're using common sense, should not be a 70, just for the name alone. By the way, it's not only the idea that we all get that you're promoting a person who's shown loyalty to the church and been obedient to the church lawyers when he should have just done the right thing. But by putting him in as a 70, you've also told all the members of his ward and his stake who had concerns to the point that the church guy came that Sunday and said that whole statement, because they're all in the pews going like, I don't think I like this idea that my stake president is not reporting child abuse. And so when you promote him as a 70, you've told all the people in the pews, at the end of the day, it's not up to you to decide. He's our call, and he's loyal to us, and we've promoted him, and so your job is to get right with it. This is an offense to lots more people than just Hinsey and those of us in the post-Mormon side who are harping on child abuse on a weekly basis. This also goes to the heart of those active members of that ward and stake who are wrestling with, how does this guy get called in as a 70 when I still can't figure out why this happened the way it did?
I found out about this on Thursday from a member of the stake who was involved, who was there when this statement was stated, may have been involved in recording it. I can't speak for that. But yeah, so let me go ahead and, Rebecca, before I go to you, let me go ahead and try and place this in the most stark terms I can. And you made me think of it, Bill. The reason why 2020 is important is because what D. Todd Kristofferson is trying to say is, I didn't know. I didn't know that my brother was the serial predator on kids in the family. And this is really, what we know is he didn't go to police. Even in 2020, if he found out then, he didn't go to police. Well, he's saying, oh, the victims didn't want me to go to police. There's a lot of victims, a lot of Mormon victims not wanting Mormon leaders to have to face consequences for what they do. But it's strange credulity to believe that that is true under the circumstances, that he didn't know until 2020. So what I think this ends up being is D. Todd Kristofferson, who is a man in the church who covered up child sex abuse by a bishop in the church who happened to be his brother, appearing in general conference to ask the membership to sustain another man who covered up child sex abuse by a bishop.
Yep.
Rebecca, your thoughts?
It's just systemic, and I don't believe they care. I'm sure they didn't even see that as a conflict of interest. They don't see anything. Look what they had Camille, what's her name, Johnson say, do hard with Jesus. And they're posting that everywhere. They do not see these kinds of things. They would never make that connection. And in response to D. Todd knowing in 2020, which everyone is, the consensus is yes. Even the church statement said he knew in 2020. Imagine if he had said something in 2020. When were the latest victims? 2025. Okay. Yeah. They would not have been victims had he said something. But again, this is just well done, good and faithful servant, right? And you can go back through the history of the church, and those that will do the dirty work are rewarded. D. Todd did not turn his brother in or tell, and he's at the upper pinnacle of Mormondom, right? He was put right into the first presidency. I mean, there's so many examples on a grassroots level. Somebody like a city planner in Cody, Wyoming, who does the city dirty, by pushing the church's agenda within the city. And that city planner on a mission, house paid off, if that has anything to do with the church, allegedly, people are rewarded, and they know this. And there's an oath that everybody's taken where you do what it takes. And that supersedes anything else, any morality clause you might feel. Mountain Meadows Massacre, if we want to go way back, all those men were leaders, became leaders, were founders like my ancestor. You get rewarded for doing what the Lord requires. May not be the best look, might be hard, might be against your moral compass, but you're going to get rewarded for it. And that's how the church works.
Very good. Thank you, Rebecca. Back to you.
Back to me. Oh my goodness. All right. Is that all you have to say about conference, RFM?
Hi, so it is.
Let me ask you this. How did you detox after all of that?
Slowly, very slowly. I was oh my gosh, I could tell you stories.
Uh-oh.
But by the last session, I'm in the middle of it, and I'm just going, okay, help me end this, please. The pain was so much. It's amazing, really. It is, it's inhuman.
Yeah.
And inhumane that any church would ask its members to go through something like this twice a year, for crying out loud. Once in a lifetime is more than enough.
And on Easter, although it wasn't really Easter, I picture you there in your studio with maybe a white towel around your neck, Wendy rubbing your shoulders, going, "You can do it, Rocky, Rocky."
No, she's at the Easter egg, Easter egg hunt that I missed. I missed because the church puts Mormonism before Jesus. And on Easter, we're going to have general conference, damn it.
Yep. And we're going to talk about that next. So I'm going to cover, there was some other news, believe it or not conference related. And I'm just going to go through a couple stories here. Of course, the biggest news is that Jesus did not come back this weekend. This had been all over the place, especially like, as you pointed out, RFM, on those doomsday podcasts. It was the Solemn Assembly, Easter and conference merged, earthquakes, taking money out of the stock market. There were all wars and rumors of wars. People were sure he was coming back. But as my meme here says, I already told you I'm not coming back until after the Olympics, right? Or the open house. There's too much going on. He did not make an appearance unless I somehow missed it. So,
Rebecca, you know what the amazing thing is?
What?
The fact that they were over there beating the drum about Jesus coming back because of all these confluences. There's the blood moon, there's the Easter, there's the general conference, there's everything you said. And it all fell through like anybody with half a brain knew it would, but it's not going to diminish their enthusiasm one iota. If anything, it will increase.
It will increase. In fact, I picked up on a thread on Faithful social media where they believed that it really could happen. And they were talking about what would happen if I were in the restroom when it happened and I missed it. What would happen if when he came back, he accidentally landed on me in his descent? These are real thoughts from faithful members about how literally they take the second coming. These are the
things. They must be psych ward radio watchers.
Yeah, I don't know, but these are the things that they, keep them up at night. So Jesus did not come back, but I will tell you who did make an appearance, and this is the headline. It's not anything else about conference. And I checked the headlines. This is the headline that is getting all the attention. Man arrested for streaking at Temple Square during general conference. This is consuming the news cycle, not anything about appointments or solemn assemblies or, word of God. It's all about streaking. I'm old enough to remember streaking. Are you guys old enough to remember streaking in the 70s? Did you ever do it?
I just want you to know, Rebecca, that he ain't rude. He ain't rude. He's just in the mood to run in the nude.
Oh, yes, they call him the streak. Do you know that song, Bill? It's an old song.
Nope. And thank goodness.
It was a real thing.
It was a real thing.
But now people are getting arrested for it.
And now people are getting, it was a huge thing. I have a family member whose mom used to drive all the kids in a station wagon out and take them in LA and let them streak. It was fun. It was like a fun, wholesome family activity. Not so much anymore, right? So, and of course, I had to make this meme here because somebody brought up the point. Would it have been more blasphemous if he had been streaking in his garments? And I don't know. You guys are going to have to weigh in on the chat on that one, because I tend to think, yes, that they might perhaps have had more of a problem with it. But just to briefly go through the article, a man was arrested for streaking on the grounds of Temple Square during conference, of course. He's 36-year-old Mitchell Dean Anderson, and he was seen completely disrobing and was completely naked with exposed genitals and buttocks. And this is in front of 1,000 people, we were told. So I'm guessing it was when people were waiting to go in or between sessions. I guess if it says it was in the morning in one article I read. Church security saw the man, covered him with a blanket. Oh, yes, thousands of members, including children, were gathered during the Saturday session. So he was arrested on suspicion of lewdness involving a child, because when you do disrobe and there are children there, it's going to be even more of an intense charge. Oh, Isn't that right, RFM?
Absolutely. By the way, this Mitchell Dean Anderson, isn't he the guy who played MacGyver?
I think that was a similar name.
Oh, wait, that was Richard Dean Anderson. Maybe a relative.
I don't know, but I'm going to go forward here because RFM thought he might possibly know. Bill thought he might possibly know the person. We were talking about this today. Did you determine, Bill, if you are friends with the streaker or not?
I'll just say there was a Mitchell Anderson in my Sandusky ward in Ohio. His family was from Utah originally. I think he went to school at BYU, and I know he moved away from Ohio and lived in Utah for a while. Last I checked his Facebook page, it says he lives in like Nicaragua, I think, but that I doubt that. So it could be. I think there's a lot of Mitchell Andersons out there, so I'm definitely going to be very careful here and say it's probably not him, but maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, your friend was streaking in Guatemala.
That's it. And I also went on Facebook, and there are multiple Mitchell Andersons who graduated from BYU who are about the same age, who live in the area. So, will the real Mitchell Anderson stand up? And again, though, we do not know. Is this just a bet? Is this a taking a stand? Or is this, really, unfortunately and sadly, a mental health crisis? We have no idea the motivation or what it really means. But I was over on Ex-Mormon Reddit. I had posted this story, and I just thought some of these comments were extremely funny. Somebody said, I heard security caught him by the organ. I think, RFM, you had made that joke when I first sent you the story.
It's an old streaker joke. It's
an old streaker joke. Exactly. Quick, hide. Of course, that is a reference to words that you hear when you go to the temple. I was hungry and you clothed me. I was naked and you caught me. I thought these actually made me laugh pretty hard today. Who told you were naked? Of course, that is another reference to the LDS temple. Somebody said, if I had his Venmo, I'd divert my tithing funds. So somebody is taking this as a stand, and they want to, congratulate and support this guy. Somebody else said, I'd like to stand and bear my, there's that. They forgot to give him the initiatory poncho. I thought that was good too, because of course, in my day when I went through, you were streaking underneath that very flimsy, open at all sides poncho. Would it be more controversial if he was wearing garments? That was a question people were discussing. And somebody else just simply wrote legend, thinking that it was taking a stand. So anyway, that seemed to be the biggest news that consumed the news cycle yesterday when it came to conference. I'm sure that is not what the LDS leaders were hoping would be the takeaway, but it seems like it was. I've even seen this picked up, in bigger outlets. So any final thoughts on streaking, RFM, and then Bill?
I feel like this is all Adam and Eve's fault. If they had not partaken of the fruit, there would have been no fall, and this would not be a crime. In fact, it wouldn't even be worth noticing.
No.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this. I was watching a video today on this whole thing, some news video on YouTube, and they were talking about the way Utah law works. Every kid who was in the presence of that, it is it a felony charge? But it's a charge for sure of like lewdness and something in front of a child. Each one of those comes with its own thing. If they if they take it that, they have leniency and they can choose to only charge him once, but technically they could charge him for every kid that's there. And I think if it gets to 3 charges, he has to be on a child like predator list for like 10 years. So now his red dot of his house is on the map for the next decade. If this was because of a bet, again, if it's mental illness, I'm super sorry that that happened, and hopefully he gets the best of care. If he lost a bet the night before, let's say he's a post-Mormon, he's sitting around with his friends, they're like, hey, general conference is tomorrow, and they're playing a game. They're like, hey, whoever loses, they got to do this. And now he's got to do it. This isn't good. So whatever the reason, this isn't good.
No, and that's a life-changing offense. I mean, I remember someone in my neighborhood there was a running trail in my neighborhood, and it did go past an elementary school, but you couldn't really see the school. The running trail was set back. The person had to relieve themselves. It was a guy. He peed, on the side of the trail, but it was within 30 yards of an elementary school, unbeknownst to him. And somebody said, and that, I can see, okay, fine, I shouldn't pee next to the running trail, but then you add that whole level of elementary school that you didn't know was there, and you're in a serious amount of trouble. So anyway, we hope that, we hope this outcome can be as positive as possible for whatever happened here. So
your friend may have just been relieving himself, but really that's what all the pervs say.
And that's
I was just taking a whiz.
Ignore my trench coat. I was just, gosh, oh my goodness. Anyway, so I think that's the end of my conference report right there. Let's go on here. Okay, there was some temple news, believe it or not. Now, I got word from some of my friends there in the neighborhood in Cody that the church was ready to do a lighting test. Meaning that exactly, can't even see, the lights are so bright. And that means that they're going to, flip the lights on, and then they're going to take a sensor out there, a laser, to see if there are any places that are dark, any recessed areas on the temple that they need to put more lighting on. It's a test to see how their lighting scheme is working out. And I do want to point out again, as I bring up, the city planner and his alleged interference in the planning commission, they thought that they were still hammering out details on the lighting as they went meeting after meeting. And it turned out it had actually passed as is during the first meeting. So the church can do whatever it wants. You compare that to Fairview, where they very carefully worked out the lighting package, right? So it has to be off at a certain time, certain levels of lighting, certain kinds of lighting. That didn't happen in Cody. The church can do whatever it wants with the lighting because of the confusion of how it was voted through. The planning commission did not know they were saying okay to everything carte blanche. So they lit up the temple, and I received this picture from a neighbor's deck. There it is. And this is a beautiful area. I have stood there before the temple was built, because I've been reporting on this for 3 years, and you can look out over that valley, and there's a mountain, and it is just a gorgeous dark sky. But this is what it looks like. And one of the local papers picked up on it. The title is Cody Temple Lights Up for First Time, and Neighbors Are Not Happy. As you can see, here are some more pictures that were in the paper on the left. What I think is interesting is this top picture on the right is what the LDS Church put out. They also put out an announcement, and they said, hey, look, we lit the temple. We're testing it. Below is the picture from the neighbor. Now, I don't know if it's just exposure or what it is, but the top picture shows what they call that wash lighting, where they just sort of uplight it and then it reflects. But that is not what the neighbors are seeing. But that top picture is what the LDS Church put out with this information about the latest step in the temple building, and that's the lighting test. This picture, I think, says it all. There is a neighbor who has a sunroom that is, a large part of the lower level of her house, and all she can see is the temple. Of course, everybody's contacted the city. They're saying, is this really how it's going to be? It's probably going to be even lighter. Like I said, they took lasers out there to say, not enough light, more light, right? And I don't know, it's just heartbreaking to me, having worked with these neighbors, talked to these wonderful people, seen this beautiful area. And this is what's coming for them, again, with no stipulation of having to turn them off or anything. Hopefully common sense will prevail and the church will do the right thing, but they don't have to, given what was voted. Oops. And then there's a friend of mine made this awesome reel that Bill Reel is going to show right now, a sort of a juxtaposition of one of the talks we heard at conference and what's going on with the Cody lighting.
The night was so dark that I could hardly see anything. Instinctively, I looked up and noticed a tiny flickering point of light, then another. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, the sky filled with stars. The night was so dark.
Exactly. Yeah. So how dare you, LDS Church, talk about stars and beautiful night sky and being inspired and feeling the divine when you are robbing people everywhere of that by your temples that are lit up like a birthday cake. Any thoughts on Cody, Wyoming and the lighting test, Bill, and then RFM?
I don't even think that's attractive to have it be that lit. And if I was anyone in that town, like, yeah, I can see why they would be hurt, disturbed to have that much light coming into, at nighttime. Again, that picture you had,
yeah,
that's pretty late evening.
Yep.
It's pretty dark, and yet you can see the grass as you get closer to the temple has got more light on it. Like, it really does light up a lot of geography around it. And if anybody isn't a giant fan of temples and an active Mormon, you're going to be a little pissed that that's what you ended up with near your property.
Well, trying to find a silver lining behind this cloud, I think it is heartening and encouraging that the church cares about non-members as much as they care about their own members.
You mean to share the beautiful temple light with everyone?
I mean, not at all.
There you go. And people don't seem to understand when I post about this. Now, I bought a house to raise my little boys in that looked out over the Mount Timpanogos temple, right? From every window on one side of it, including the boys' bedroom, you could see it. And when I bought the house, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. They'll grow up into the shadow of the temple. Right? I know it was so silly. But then I realized that that's all they can see out the window. It was a mile away, but you really could see it. It's shown into the room. I did have to buy blackout curtains to black out the temple so that my kids could sleep. I don't know what kind of analogy you want to draw there, but I did black out the temple. So it shows up. It's the only thing lit up at that time of night, wherever it is. So anyway,
the LDS Church, making friends and influencing people one temple at a time.
Exactly. That's exactly it. But other towns do look at this, and it's a cautionary tale. And as they can in their council meetings, as they're hammering out the details of temple, they do take note. So hopefully other temples, can learn from this and get some, protocols in place. So, all right, let's move on. Okay. I wanted to do my final LDS Easter watch. Remember, I've been doing this every week coming up to conference. And basically I just have about 2 slides. Here's a meme I made: parking lot at church on Easter. And you can see the cars are just packed in there. And then parking at church on Mormon Easter. Because again, there was nobody in any church. And I had a lot of people sending me pictures, banners saying, come worship with us on Easter. We're still up everywhere. I received about a dozen pictures from, I'm not going to show them, but those banners that I've been showing all along that say worship with us on Easter without a date, they were still outside of the church, although the church looked like that. And I have to say, this that I received right here, this pretty much said it all. This is a sign hanging on a meeting house door. And it says, April 4th and 5th, this building is closed in big letters. If you are here for Easter worship on Sunday, April 5th, this building is closed for our worldwide general conference. Watch us at da-da-da. So they were not hesitant at all to tell people, don't even try to come here and worship for Easter. We're closed and you can simply watch general conference. So I am going to make a prediction. I think by 2029, which is the next time this happens, 3 years from now, when we're on the newscast 3 years from now, I feel like they might consider changing it. If they go at this breakneck speed of mainstream Christianity, right? I mean, every day there's something new. They may actually postpone conference for Easter again in 2029. I'm going to go on record and maybe we'll play this soundbite in 2029. Any final thoughts on Mormon Easter, RFM, and then Bill?
I think it's just a good thing that nobody is going to be going to the Mormon church unless they have to anyway. I don't think they were turning away a lot of people at the doors.
No, it's the principle of the matter.
Because Mormonism is about appearances, I don't think the leaders of the LDS Church are ever really going to take seriously Holy Week and Good Friday. And, I just don't think that's going to happen. So I'm half tempted to take that bet with you, Rebecca, that in 2029, the church still considers the annual anniversary of the organization of the church on April 6th of 1830 to be the more important thing. And so that's why we have our general conference every 6 months, and it falls in the first week of April. And I don't anticipate that Easter is going to get in the way that soon.
This is an interesting year, 2026. You're right, Bill, because in 2026, Christmas comes the day after Easter.
That's it. Mormon Christmas. Yes, Mormon Christmas is April 6th. You're not wrong. So anyway, we'll see what happens next year. But I think we came, we saw, we conquered, we did it. We reported Easter to death. And now you guys don't have to hear it anymore from us. We made our point, I think. So if you guys read, this will be my, let's see, I think I have one more little story after this. But if you remember very dramatically, last week on the newscast, we got that breaking news at the very end about changing the Sunday school schedule. And I just wanted to go over a little bit the aftermath, some of the things that have come out in articles. There have been, several podcasts, there have been shorts, there have been broadcasts about exactly what has happened. So the title here is Reactions to LDS Meeting Changes. Big mistake. I really like the idea. Lightning round of gospel doctrine. And I think we don't need to read any of the article anymore because we all know what happened. First, they say women can be Sunday school presidents and president counselors. And then they make it so Sunday school is only 25 minutes each Sunday, although it is more frequent, I guess, but it's still less time. So for those of you somehow missed this, it's basically a 3-hour block in 2 hours. You're going to have your regular sacrament meeting, and then you're going to have a 25-minute young women, 25-minute Sunday school, 25-minute young men, 25-minute Sunday school, 25-minute Relief Society, 25-minute Sunday school, 25-minute priesthood, 20, you get the idea, with a 5-minute, in between. So very quickly, I think a lot of us were like, okay, this is very problematic. Even as we were discussing it at the end of the newscast, not even really knowing all the details, I think the three of us could see pretty clearly what the problems with this could be. But faithful podcasters had to instantly jump out and say, this is fire. This is amazing. This is going to take care of a lot of problems. This is going to make things wonderful for people. Well, I'm always over on Faithful social media, and they are really struggling with the idea. And I think they look at it very realistically because they are in the trenches. They are the ones in the meetings. They are running these things, and they can see all too clearly the problems with this. So somebody here had sort of summarized what Jasmine was saying, and I'll go through that. She says there are more opportunities for connecting weekly with other members. Okay. I'm just going to read through these. I know I'm shaking my head at every single one. More opportunities to connect. 25-minute lessons will encourage a focus on the most important things in the lesson and perhaps help people with shorter attention spans. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. Wards have more flexibility. They can end their meetings with sacrament meeting. That was another part of it, that a ward could do all of their auxiliary meetings first and then sacrament meeting. But I believe that is just to do the bow tie ward, where you have to have, sacrament meetings and then have your youth meet together to even begin to make up the number of people that it would take to have those auxiliary meetings. The new version of for strength, and we can talk about this later, but they're going to only be using for strength of youth for the kids. This is going to be really fascinating too. And pilot programs show positive results of this schedule, indicating that weekly interactions can strengthen bonds and spiritual engagement. Okay. So, and I made this little sign that says, I promise it will be awesome. That's some random church leader. And I'm going to ask your opinion here, but I kind of went through what I believe is happening here and things that I see wrong with the schedule change. So first of all, a total loss of community and fellowship that occurs in the foyer and hallways between the breaks, where the breaks used to be 10 minutes. You could take an extra 5 minutes and talk to someone for 15 minutes. 5 minutes now, it's not going to happen. Total loss of community, if there even isn't a community left. Another thing wrong, I see our parents with small children will miss most of the first class as they take their child to the bathroom to get them settled in primary or nursery. I don't know how many of you can relate to that, but you have to get your kids all situated. Older members will have a hard time using the restroom, making their way to class, missed most of the first class. Just mobility issues in the halls are going to be a problem with that short span there. Teenagers won't be able to socialize in class because this is the other thing they're talking about. Get rid of all the fluff. Get rid of all the interaction. Get rid of the socialization. Hit that lesson. That's what those
But
teenagers
notice that Jasmine, in spite of that, is saying this is going to help with all the interactions.
That's what
Even
I'm
though
saying.
it's obviously going to detract from them.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Jasmine's list, I push back and counter almost every single thing. Teenagers won't be able to socialize in class, which is a huge part of what makes, if not the only part of what makes going to church valuable. I would say that all of us that stayed in the church until our 60s, it was because of the interactions we had as teenagers and the camaraderie and the friendship, and it set us on the lifetime path. This is not going to happen anymore with this new schedule. Adults won't be able to socialize in class, which is a huge part of what makes going to church valuable. I just don't think they understand. Teachers will still have to do the same amount of preparation for realistically only a 15-minute, once you cut out the opening and closing prayer, which you still have to have in each class. They're only going to have a very short time, but they'll still have to spend all the week preparing. Members policing members to get everyone to class on time, leading to a rushed and stressful environment. I believe that will be the job of the Sunday school presidency, right? I've been shushed and shooed to class as a grown woman by men half my age. It's only going to get worse. Get to class, ladies. Get to class. Ooh, that's triggering. Even me just saying that, right? Oh my gosh. And finally, a female Sunday school presidency is now only relevant 25 minutes a week. So before I go to why they did it, Bill and then RFM, what are your takeaways on why this won't work?
I think that Jasmine is hitting on the idea that you get to interact with a wider array of people. You get these people for 25 minutes and you get those people for 25 minutes. But as you're pointing out, someone made a joke about the 15 minutes of announcements by the elders quorum. I mean, I remember church, you sort of need meetings to be a little long so that all of the nonsense gets its way in. Even if you eliminate that, now the nonsense is gone. There's no time for announcements. People have to rush to the bathroom, rush back to class. They get into the classroom. The teacher has a lesson to give. There is going to be so little room for any conversation, even if it's an important conversation around a gospel topic. There is so little time now for anyone to talk about anything, even the important stuff, that while you might see more people, Jasmine, you will have less human connection that is of any value that you take with you out of those meetings.
Yep, perfectly said.
Well, reality is not important for her. She just knows the change has been made. It's got to be good because the church is doing it. So therefore, she has to present it in a positive way. I think that's all that's going on. I'll tell you what's going on with me, which is back when I was the gospel doctrine teacher, the class lengths were 40 minutes. And Mormons appear to have a number of strategies of trying to shorten the amount of time that is available for the actual lesson.
Yeah.
First has to do with the class president, who's going to fumble around and make some dumb announcements and then look around and see if he can recognize anybody who's visiting and make them stand up and everybody say hi. And then he's going to call on somebody to give the opening prayer, or he's also going to hand around the roll sheet. And then somebody's going to come up and blather through an opening prayer. By that time, you've got at least 5 minutes have already been eaten up. And you're going to do something similar at the end, because you do have to have a closing prayer at the end, though you don't have to have the announcements. I did away with all of that when I was the teacher because I was so jealous of my only 40 minutes. My gosh. Only 40 minutes to teach. So I gave the opening prayer. I didn't have any president. And and I gave it very quick and right on the time. Because believe it or not, most classes in the LDS Church don't start on time either. So 15 minutes, I think, is optimistic. And if you got 15 minutes to give a lesson, why bother giving a lesson at all?
Yep.
And as you and I have mentioned and talked about, Bill, maybe that's part of the idea too, that you don't have enough time to get into anything more than just the surface level stuff that you've heard ever since you were in primary, and you will hear in the LDS Church until the day you die.
Yep, I agree. And that's why I've come up with my list of why they really did it. But I will say that over on Faithful social media, they are wrestling with how to do this. And I came across a post where someone said, oh, we have some talkers in Relief Society. They just need to talk. And everyone said, well, it's time to get out a timer. You've got to stop those talkers. And you got to have a 1-minute timer. And I'm thinking, you know what? Those talkers probably really need some kind of human connection that day. And that's why they're talking. So the idea that they're already saying they're going to get out a timer, this is not going to go well at all. So I came up with my list of why they really did it. And I'll share my personal story on the first one. My first reason is teachers who only taught every other week, because before, you have to understand, if you were a young woman's teacher, you would only teach every other week. The other week would be the Sunday school teacher. And this is one of the reasons, that they did it, so that they would have, mostly for the youth, a touch with the youth, an experience with the youth every single Sunday, because they weren't going to young men, young women every week. So if you were a teacher that taught every other week, you were leaving after sacrament meeting or not showing up at all. And I saw this on social media too. Somebody said, Faithful, sometimes I don't go that week, I'm not teaching, and I go visit my parents at assisted living, some other good things. But this is exactly what happened to me. And I've told this before, and I'll tell it really quickly. I was a primary pianist. I had relegated myself down to that little corner there, and I had a co-pianist. And so I only had to go every other Sunday. And I started to experience second Saturday, sitting outside with my cup of tea, reading a book, going to brunch. And it became really important to me. And it was every other Sunday. So I was fine going in and playing the piano the Sundays I wasn't doing that. Well, my co-pianist got fired for not being so good. There was a new chorister, and she's like, he's not good enough, get rid of him. So I was back to doing it every single Sunday, right? I did about a month of that, and I realized I value what I'm doing on my second Saturday way more than what's happening here. It's really important to my mental health. It's important to everything about me, and I am not going to be able to do it at all. I choose this over that. So I did. I sent a text and said, I'm not going to be able to come back. I'm just not. And I had asked them, please find me a sub, please find me a co-pianist, and they didn't. Couple minutes after I sent that text, they're like, hey, we found you somebody. But no, it was too late. The genie was out of the bottle. So I think this will have an impact on people, because they have been enjoying every other Sunday, and now they're back to having to go every single week. So another reason I think they did it is they realized the high demand and high control element was disappearing because of this, having a little more of a loose schedule every other week. So now they can check on the youth and the adults in every class every week with no gaps. I also think they don't want deep dives, like you said, RFM, into the LDS material anymore. Classroom discussions can lead to all kinds of topics being brought up as that they do not want discussed. I think you're absolutely right, RFM, on that. Another reason I think is they want to bring back, and this is Bill. Bill made this suggestion last week, and I thought about this, and I thought this could be true. They want to bring back longer church, 2.5 hour or perhaps 3 hour. In a year or so, they say that they're just going to add a little bit more to the classes. They just need a little more time. Or maybe they'll take some out of sacrament meeting. That's my next one. Maybe they really are going to go to 1 hour church, because this is the 1 hour church schedule. Sacrament meeting is simply announcements and sacrament, and then the 2 auxiliary meetings. So I don't know. These are some of the reasons I thought of why they actually did it, because there's a reason for it. What do you guys think about the actual reasons behind it, Bill, and then RFM?
In the previous slide here, let me just look here. Again, their words: strengthen bonds and spiritual engagement. Now, that sounds like the positive thing you would say when you're trying to describe this in a faithful way. But I think it really does come down to, as you pointed out, Rebecca, making it so people can't skip church.
Mhm.
They need to be there. And also, they don't want room for questions. And so the spiritual engagement, really 25 minutes in a class gives you room for spiritual engagement, and 25 minutes in two different places gives you the time to strengthen bonds. It doesn't. They're putting words on what it is that it isn't.
Yep. Very well said. RFM?
I think the overriding concern that church has is people are leaving, and they're leaving fast, and they know it in spite of their statistics and their little games they play. So for the past 16 years, the church has been engaged in change after change after change after change, which signals to anybody who's watching that they're losing members hand over fist, whether it's getting rid of the high priest and consolidating them into the elders' quorum, whether it's reducing mission ages for the missionaries in 2012, and then for the sister missionaries again more recently. Everything they're doing is showing that people are leaving the church. And this is another thing, because what they're doing is they've got no idea what to do. So it appears that what their overriding goal is to respond to all the people leaving the church is to make it easier to be a Mormon. And a lot of these things fall into that category too. And this is another one, to go from 3 hours to 2 hours. Okay, we're trying to give you what you want. Quit leaving, okay? Quit leaving. So they're just trying to make things easier to be a Mormon. And I think that's all that this is, really, when it's boiled down.
Yep, those are great observations. These were just some little anecdotes. I read so many where people are just saying this is such a loss of community. That was the main concern for some people, for teenagers or older people. This is really important, and there is no more community when you're rushing around and you're sitting down for just a few minutes and then going on to the next thing. So I thought this was great. Somebody said this in one of the threads I was reading: the people making the decision to do this new schedule haven't really done church in a long, long time. They also haven't needed the community the way that we do in a long, long time. And we're talking about the leaders in a lofty tower who don't have any idea what it's like to be on the ground, running lessons, getting kids to class, needing community, speaking in Relief Society without a 1-minute timer shutting you down. They have no idea what the people need, and they've just done something the exact opposite. Now, I promised you a little conspiracy theory. We made the observation last week when we kind of broke the story. This is weird. Monday night on Holy Week? Why would they do this? Everything else they're putting out about Holy Week, is all the Jesus and everything that's going on. Why would they all of a sudden do this on a Monday night? It's just very strange. And of course, we sort of thought, well, are we conspiracy minded? This is the very same day, just a few hours before, that an article in the Chicago Sun-Times had come out naming and calling out D. Todd Kristofferson, brother of Wade Kristofferson, member of the LDS First Presidency. The headline is, Top Mormon Leader D. Todd Kristofferson knew around 2020 that his brother was an alleged child molester. So this article came out. It was getting traction, mostly thanks to me, but it was getting traction. And then suddenly this announcement that just blew everything out of the water. They know this announcement is more exciting than anything that's going to happen at conference. They know this announcement is going to dominate the news cycle. Why would you do this on Holy Week, where you're trying to prove that you're a Christian and you have all kinds of media campaigns, introducing the Mormon Holy Week and the walkthroughs and all of that. And also when you're trying to put out information about the upcoming conference. So somebody speculated, TBM's speculating about why the Sunday school change wasn't talked about in conference. Part of the announcement said there will be further instructions and information given at conference. That didn't happen. They never mentioned it again. Now, we all know that conference talks are locked down, right? They're written, they're scripted, they're there. There's no wiggle room or anything like that. So some conspiracy-minded people are saying, much like the tank top garment, this could have been leaked, more likely put out suddenly, maybe to detract from D. Todd's article in the Chicago Sun-Times, because it just seemed odd to put something out that they knew would cause such a blood in the water feeding frenzy of, oh my gosh, a new meeting schedule, when there are other important things to be talking about that week. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but I found that interesting that even the faithful were kind of speculating, where's the information? Why did they talk about it?
This article, or whatever it is, humor, meme, satire, says TBMs are saying the schedule change was leaked and maybe the GAs were upset about it. Yeah, it was probably leaked, but by the GAs themselves. They're not upset about it.
Oh, yeah. No,
Jasmine Rappley has over 100,000 views on a podcast about change in the church schedule. You bet it, Bruce.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to say something separate from this news story that's in this. They acknowledge that D. Todd Kristofferson learned about Wade Kristofferson's predatory behavior towards children in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
He was still free, without any influence from D. Todd, to contact nieces or nephews leading up through 2025. And Wade Kristofferson was allowed to serve in callings that put him in the space of children up until 2025. I don't think creating 2020 as that line in the sand really does the job they want it to.
No, I don't think so either. And the Chicago Sun-Times, this information comes from that statement from the church that we covered where, oh my gosh, they're making a statement. And their answer is he knew only in 2020. Well, what happened in 21 and 22 and 23 and 24 when he was mailing letters to the children, allegedly? Exactly. So I think this article is a big deal. I think it could be big enough for them to say, what kind of information can we put out? Let's put this out. They'll eat it up. So I don't know.
Kristofferson is responsible for this abuse that has happened since he found out, to the extent that it would not have happened if he had called the police.
The two places we're worried about Wade doing things is with people within a church capacity or within his own family. And D. Todd is one of the few people in all the world who could have stopped both spaces and made them safe.
This is why, if he had any dignity whatsoever, he would have stepped down from his position in the first presidency and as an apostle in the church.
Yeah. And I feel like we did not cover this article because it came out at the same time of a whole bunch of other breaking news we were talking about. So we may want to go back and cover this article next week, possibly, because we've alluded to it, but we have not gone through it. So, but anyway, interesting. So, okay. Any final thoughts on the meeting schedule? And I'll go to my very last story about Taylor Frankie Paul. No more thoughts? Okay. And I am going to skip this because it's really good and I want to cover it in depth next week. So, okay. Taylor Frankie Paul. Oh my goodness. Yes, she is a Mormon. People try to say she's not, but now she has made a public announcement that she is stepping away from Mormonism. She is detaching from Mormonism. And this, I came across her Instagram post late last night. And by today, it's all over all the news cycles. Yeah.
And that was the point? You think that was the reason?
Possibly.
Yeah. She's still trying to cling on to some relevance.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that it's interesting since everything came out about her alleged domestic violence and abuse and all of that, and they canceled The Bachelorette. She has been posting more and more religiously themed things, as people tend to do. Oh, I found Jesus, or oh, I this. But in this case, she has said she's detaching from Mormonism. She will still attend with family members now and then. She believes in God, Jesus, the Bible. She believes in prayer, whether it's in a church or on a bathroom floor wrapped around a toilet. She actually says that, on a bathroom floor. And she believes that there are all kinds of people, religious and not religious, that understand God and that can help her. And so it is very interesting, but it's kind of big news, because if you're not Mormon, can you be a secret life of a Mormon wife? I don't know.
Let's just hope that on those occasions that she does visit the Mormon church, that they don't have the metal chairs set up in the overflow.
Oh, God. Oh, that's terrible. Okay. I can't even laugh at that. That's so bad. That's really bad. Bill, any final thoughts on Taylor Frankie Paul publicly announcing she's detaching? We see this a lot with, celebrities. They eventually come out and say, I'm parting ways. I'm no longer a part of the LDS church.
That makes sense. She had lost the light in her eyes years ago, at least.
Yeah,
so
at least.
She's got a lot of crazy in those eyes to replace the light, though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, and again, that means she's a member. That means she's not been separated involuntarily from the church. A lot of people still are members, so you'd think interesting. All right, let's go into, I think that's everything. Any last thoughts on any story? And then we'll go into what's coming up next. Everybody good? Yeah, it was a great newscast, I thought. Okay, so what's coming up next? Mormonish is always on Tuesday nights, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. We have Ganesh sharing with us again. And most of my podcasts start with just a conversation with a friend. What about this? And I'm like, that is fascinating. He is going to follow the money of the financing of the Book of Mormon. Of course, we've all heard the Martin Harris story, right? Putting up his farm, his wife is upset. There's a lot more to it. And there are a lot more people that contributed resources and money. And it's very telling who did contribute, their motivations, and kind of the aftermath. So follow the money, financing the Book of Mormon. This is going to be tomorrow night, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And that's Mormonish. What do you guys have coming up?
Well, on Wednesday, we have got a special edition of Mormonism Live. It's going to be about the general conference. I'm going to get clips. I'm going to go over my notes. Bill's going to help me out with that. And we're going to present the clips of the most mortifying, interesting, I can't believe he said that moments from general conference. We'll probably have around 10 of them. There was a lot of them in this past general conference. It should be a lot of fun. And did you want to say anything else about this episode, Bill?
No, I'm actually, because I don't watch conference, because you do that on my behalf. It's almost like proxy work that you're doing for and in behalf of Bill, who will not watch it. I'm excited.
The one who's dead.
If somebody could dwindle conference down to 10 sound bites, I would love that. And you're going to do that for me and for all of you out there. So please do tune in.
Okay, very good. Then a week from Wednesday, which should be April 15th, we are expecting to have on Mormonism Live the world-renowned professor and expert on New Testament studies, Dr. Bart Ehrman from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, though he may be recently retired from that position, which he held for a long, long time. And he's going to be speaking on the subject of, does the Bible prove Mormonism is true? We are going to frame this. He was on Mormon Stories a couple months ago. We're going to do something completely different. And now for something completely different. We're going to do something where we're going to look at all these proof texts that Mormons use to prove Mormonism is true and ask Dr. Ehrman whether that's really what they mean when they appear in the Bible, or do they mean perhaps something else? So hence the title, Does the Bible Prove Mormonism is True as the Mormons Claim? So that should be a lot of fun. And then there's something that Bill is doing.
Yeah, so this is part of the series, A Logical Deconstruction of Mormonism. Why did they move the hill Cumorah? Why? And this here, it says here, why did the hill Cumorah move? But I think the title of the episode itself is, why did they move the hill Cumorah? This is like the 9th one now in the series. There will be 30 of them total. This one will release Thursday morning, sometime around 8 or 9 a.m.
You know how in Poltergeist it says you move the headstones, but you left the bodies?
Yeah.
Well, with the hill Cumorah, they moved the bodies, but they left the headstones.
Yeah, it's the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah. So then on Friday night, Mormonism After Dark with me and a new co-host, Dallas Oaks. That'll be April 10th, 2026. And we are going to let everybody else out there tell us what you think about General Conference. Okay. By this point, I am tired of talking about it, even though I still have more to say. But I want to give you a chance to let us know what you thought about General Conference, the best and worst parts from your point of view. That'll be on Friday, beginning at 8 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time, as it does every week.
Just to before you jump to that, doesn't he kind of look like a Simpsons character?
He's an individual. He does look like a Simpsons character. You're right, but he has managed to go. He lives his life in Muppet stages. In midlife, with the big bushy black eyebrows, he resembled no Muppet more than Sam Eagle. That is not patriotic. But now that he's grown older, he looks like Dr. Bunsen Honeydew. And of course, Henry Eyring is his assistant, Beaker.
Yep.
Or perhaps his name should be Leaker.
Oh my God.
Because he's always crying. And my assistant, Leaker.
I hope.
And then there's a general conference recap. There's 4 episodes of that from this past weekend. If you haven't checked it out, you might want to. I keep it to 45 minutes per session, and hopefully it's more entertaining than the original was.
It couldn't be less.
There's no way it could be less. Yes. Is that it? Did we do it? I think we accomplished it. Well, this has been a fantastic episode, everybody, and we survived Easter weekend, Holy Week, General Conference. Jesus did not return as far as we know. Some people would say he's already here and you guys just don't know because you're not in on it. That's possible too. But I don't know. If anybody's seen Jesus, shoot us a tip. We'd like to know. So anyway, we'll say good night until next Monday. We're always at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. The Mormon Newscast. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, RFM. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Good night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.